Hi, welcome back. In this video, we are going to be looking a little bit more into detail on different products. And the first product that we're going to be looking at is the Business Acumen Skills product, which is a multiplayer business simulation game. As we speak, this particular game today, in terms of a clientele, has one corporate clientele, which is Roche from Switzerland. We have a partner in Switzerland who's been selling this particular product to various universities and corporates. And Roche is using this particular product as for the first time manager program. And this particular game has been used in the FTM program for the last 3 years. The game is also used as a part of the strategic business management curriculum in a couple of B schools in India, Amrita School of Business, VJIM, Christ University, to name a few. Apart from that, colleges like XLRA, IIM, IIFT have been using this particular platform, for competition and as a part of their entire consulting, club. So this is, a game that's, one of the products which is a pure product where we would be in a position to sell this particular product to clients directly without much of a customization at this point in time. So let me just quickly give you a walkthrough of this particular product. What are the overall learning objectives? The learning objectives of this particular game is twofold. One is to train employees on managerial skills and business acumen skills and help them understand higher order abilities such as decision making, critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, leadership qualities, so on and so forth. So the various aspects of this particular game helps individuals kind of portray some of these traits that they have, and the game has the ability to measure all of these parameters non-intrusively in the form of a stealth assessment at the end of the game. The game can also be used as assessment centers, where typically today in assessment centers we provide case studies and people will fill in pen and paper case studies, and then there would be a interview that happens with one of the assessors. So instead of that, we would be in a position to go ahead and then create a complete virtual environment where people run a business enterprise and we are able to measure their higher order abilities. In terms of the overall proficiency simulated, we are looking at business and financial acumen, complex problem solving, cognitive flexibility, critical and strategic thinking, negotiation skills, teamwork, and collaboration skills. This particular game could either be played as a single player game or it could be played as a multiplayer game. When the game is played on an individual mode, the player is playing the role of a CEO and then taking decisions like how a CEO would think. And if it is played in a multiplayer mode, every individual who's going to be playing this particular game takes up the head of a particular department, and then they would play this particular game. Right at the end of the game, there are multiple reports and profiling reports available to measure the overall ability. The game today is available in multiple editions, and these are for entry-level professionals, first-time managers, and leaders. And the game could be customized in terms of duration to suit the actual availability or the overall workshop mode that's available. In terms of a total duration of gameplay, again, this could be customized. It requires a minimum of days duration to be spent on this particular game. This game cannot be played on half a day, but it has to be one full day of gameplay. And this includes orientation, this includes debrief, this includes helping people understand their reports, so on and so forth. In terms of the overall model, the way in which we typically propose this is it has three important components. One is a pre-game activity where there is a quick orientation of the game to participants even before the day of the workshop, and we give them reading materials and tutorials for them to watch. And the moment they have gone through this particular tutorial, then on the day of the game, we make them form different teams. We help them with their strategic plan. The teams decide their own strategic plan. They make their decisions. They review their outcome of the decisions. And finally, this actually goes into a loop. And during the overall structure of the game, at every end of every time period, we actually have a debriefing session where we go ahead and then provide a lot of information on their overall performances and help them understand how things could have been much better. Uh, Today, the game simulates a manufacturing setup. When I mean a manufacturing setup, today specifically it simulates a B2C manufacturing setup. So it's a product company where the products are sold to end consumers and not in the form of a B2B, right? So this is clearly a simulation model which caters to a product firm, and it caters to a product firm which is into consumer business. Uh, Typically, we are always asked this question in terms of, can we have a services simulation, so on and so forth? The answer is yes, right? But we don't have a ready-made services simulation built in. And typically, what would happen is we would need to, go ahead and then custom make a simulation for a particular industry. But having said that, when it purely comes to higher order thinking skill sets, if it's decision making, critical thinking at the end of the day, irrespective of a product or a process business, these are skill sets or inherent ability within an individual, which is what we are measuring. So we are not really focused on the functional training part. We are not going to a bank using this particular game saying that let me teach you how to open a CASA account, or how do you do an investment banking transaction. That's not what we are looking at. Here what we are looking at is I'm giving you a critical problem, and I'm giving you a problem and looking at your ability to understand the problem, articulate the problem, arrive at various strategic options to solve the problem, take decisions in line with your strategy, and be in a position to execute it and understand the implications thereof. So in essence, typically when I used to work with Cisco systems in Singapore as a part of the L&D function, and when we did what we call the Sales Master Series back then, we used to train all the salespeople in Cisco using a simulation game, and that simulation game was on a manufacturing setup. If you reckon, Cisco is you know they are into routers and switches, and the sales people are going and then selling networking solutions. But the reason why Cisco went in for such a model was to help their salespeople think like business owners, to understand the implications of decisions on the bottom line, so that they are in a better position to articulate their network and switches to their end clients. So it is from there I got this particular inspiration to develop an end-to-end business simulation game. But today have not been quite successful, myself, in convincing some of the HR folks to look beyond the traditional functional, outlook of training people in the functional world, and not really, looking at higher order skill sets. Uh, so the games has a strategic planning and budgeting, session like in real world, where people submit a strategic plan. This is how the game looks like. Today we are using what we call the balance scorecard approach of having revenue, profitability, employee development, and share price as the four critical levers which will determine how a team is functioning. So these are the four parameters that the teams would currently be evaluated on. In terms of the overall decision making and business acumen skills, we have used a heuristics model where the entire decision making process is split into three separate areas. One is the area where I make a decision. Second are the set of choices that I have to make a decision. And third is the impact of the decisions that I've taken. So here what happens is individuals now slowly start getting accustomed to this particular decision making heuristics, where they start questioning and asking themselves as to what are the choices that I have, what is the outcome of the previous decision that I've taken, how do I understand that in the form of a report, and finally tune my current decisions, right? So that is how the entire heuristics is actually played out. So in this game, because it's a multiplayer game, you have the ability to manage conflicts with your peers, have the leadership agility to come up with various strategies, convince your own peers on that particular strategy, and then more importantly, execute that particular strategy to fruition. There are multiple reports that are available as a part of this particular game. There are qualitative and quantitative reports. as a part of the assessment centers, you could have both of these reports, designed using the evidence centered design, model. In terms of the other simulations which are available in the market, this particular game is both strategic and tactical in terms of its focus. In terms of the depth of the simulations, clearly, the simulation is extremely complex, so that the depth is very, very high, and hence the complexity is also very high. It has a non-intrusive skill report that gets produced at the end of the entire workshop. In terms of a realism, in terms of the overall features, this particular game is extremely feature loaded. Now let me just quickly give you a glimpse of how the game looks like. And alrighty, so here what you see is an ecosystem, in itself. We have a chat module enabled, so in case individuals or players who are playing this particular game who would want to understand some of the terminologies and business terminologies, they could go ahead and then ask the chat bot, and the chat bot would respond. I did tell you that we are looking at the overall profile report, which is a non-intrusive stealth report. So this is a report of a particular individual where we track their financial intelligence, planning, decision making, problem solving, and goal orientation skills, where this is available in the form of an individual work style report, and as well as a team performance report, across various teams. We actually look at how they are actually stacked as compared to their competitors. Similarly, there are multiple reports in terms of the detailed analytics report on the performance of the teams, where we understand decisions at every single time stamp or every single time instance, where we have much detailed information to look at. More importantly, there are further drill down reports. I could get into the operations decisions to understand how the individual has made their own decisions and what's the thought process behind making such decisions. So the game is far deeper than what it seems, where it can actually get into the details of how a company functions. So let's get to the game and quickly give you an overview of how the game looks like. So typically we have the train, practice, and the play mode. In the train mode, there is a tutorial where I could go into the tutorial, and there is a step-by-step tutorial which will guide me as to how the game actually looks like. So it's not a boring video per se. So what happens is I go through a step-by-step activity of how each of the functions are laid out and what each of the UI element actually means. So it's a guided mode where I actually would need to perform certain actions. Right here, I click on this particular arrow, then it tells me what each of this information is. Then I could go and click here in detail and understand the UI. So there is a step-by-step instruction of how the game is played, and all of that is covered in the tutorial section. In the demo mode, again, I get into the different editions. Let me show you the advanced edition quickly. So here I'm currently logging in as a demo player, where I'm taking up and assuming all the 6 roles in this particular game, including operations, finance, marketing. Typically, when we start off this particular game, there is a case study, like in any business simulation game, which sets the context of what this company is all about, what really transpired in the previous years when the company was functioning, what is the current challenge and problem that the CEO is facing, and why there is a change of guard, and what is really expected from the new guard, right? So all of that information is provided in the form of an interactive case study. Once the case study is being viewed, we actually get into the game itself. So this is what the game looks like. I'm not going to get into the details of the game too much, because that itself is going to take another half an hour, 40 minutes. I have another video which explains the game in detail. And if people are interested to understand a little bit more, and if you have customers who are interested, I would direct you to that particular video where you could understand the game in a lot more detail there. But just to give you a quick overview, the 64 squares, which represents a chess block, represents a market, and the individual cells represents various territories. So today we are having 4 cars. Especially it could be quite interesting for the HMM folks whose clientele is largely cars. So here we have four different car models, we have multiple customer segments, and we have the demand for these cars, that keep changing across multiple territories. So territories are geographical, boundaries. It could be Chennai, Mumbai, Delhi, so on and so forth. And the demand for these products across multiple customer segments and territories actually change. So here you have a complete dashboard which will give you the demand functions and all of the market intel, data constantly, and this, information keeps changing throughout. In terms of the overall winning criteria, like what I had mentioned, we are looking at the balanced growth between revenue, profitability, share price, and employee development index. It's a weighted average score. Revenue and profitability have about 30% weightage, and share price and employee development index has about 20% weightage each. So we take a weighted average score from the baseline value and see how well the teams are performing. If the teams are distributed and are in different locations, they could actually chat with each other or could send in emails, to communicate with each other like in real corporate world. Or, they could get into Microsoft Teams or a Google Meet and then have the conversation. This is the only game which has what is called as an employee development index, which simulates intangible parameters or organizational politics, within the organization. So here, every individual would get to answer various questions, and this could pertain to different situations that they would encounter as a part of leading those functions. So here, what would happen is individual, when they respond, each of these employee development index parameters changes, which in turn impacts the overall organization's performance. The other important feature which is not available in most of the business simulation is the entire workflow system for planning and budgeting. Like how we concluded our planning and budgeting at Emarticus, sometime back, where each department had to submit their own budgets, and the head of finance would review these budgets and then come up with a consolidated view. Similarly, in this particular game, each department would submit their own budgets, and the head of finance right here would review their budgets. They would look at their total budget requests, and they would review each of these information and would be in a better position to make their decision. So this is the first game where you have a detailed planning and budgeting session which will guide the overall strategic plan of the game. And while there is a plan versus actual, obviously, whenever there is a planning and there are actual decisions taken, you would be in a position to track the plan versus actual numbers in each of the departments as to what has been my strategic plan and how much of that particular plan did I achieve, as a part of my overall functioning. The other important aspect is in this simulation, from a realistic standpoint, you have budgets. It's not that you have unlimited cash flow like most of the other simulations in the market, where you could just go ahead and make decision irrespective of the budgets that you currently have. That doesn't happen in this particular simulation, where you would need to be cognizant of the budgets that you have and make your decisions. Like in real world, you could request for ad hoc budget request in case if you are running out of budgets, and similarly the finance team can appropriate budget from one department to another department in case they have unutilized funds. And again, all of this is culminated in the form of various reports which are available to the teams for them to look at. So this is where we help first time managers understand the importance of data, interpreting data, and looking at MISs in this particular game. And finally, the most important aspect is decisions, right? So if I'm playing the role of HR, I'm looking at all the decisions that I'm taking, from recruiting individuals, what is the salary that I'm going to provide, how many people am I going to recruit, from which channel am I going to recruit, what is going to be my acquisition cost, so on and so forth. Similarly, the kind of trainings that I would provide, implementing welfare programs, promoting employees from one level to another level, and then retrenching employees whenever required, right? So it takes care of the length and breadth of all the HR decisions today, that would be there. Similarly, let's look at, let's say, international business. In international business, I'm looking at exporting my products to different countries. So I have 5 different countries. I understand their overall country data in terms of their GDP, GNP, current account deficits, the Hofstede's cultural model, which will give me the cultural index of that particular country. And then I have 2 different mode of entry operations, which is a joint venture and an export. And then I would now need to understand, the difference and implications of this, and also look at the cultural sensitivity in terms of the ways of doing business in that particular country. So in this simulation, we have covered pretty much all the necessary information that's required for anybody to understand. So what you're seeing here is the internal organizational politics questions that I was talking to you about. So here there is a question and there is a response. Based on your response, automatically the EDI score would actually change. So in a nutshell, this particular game simulates an entire business setup in a microcosm where it transports the employee to an area which is completely risk-free, where they could make decisions, fail, and understand the implications of decisions taken. And more importantly, when they go back, to work, they understand the importance of cross-functional decision making. They understand the importance of timing, planning, and collaboration during execution. So I hope I've given you a quick glimpse. And if you would like to know more about this particular game, I would send you and point you to another video which gives you far more detailed insights onto this game. Thank you.